Okay, welcome to this month of SCIP. We are very excited to have you all today. Today we have the privilege of being able to have Brian Mackey here. Brian's the director of the improvement team here at SHC. He is really an expert when it comes to A3s, and we're excited to hear his take on A3, some of what the things that have been happening here at SHC, also some things that maybe are coming up at SHC, and then also some of his background from when he's used A3s in the past. And then we're going to have a chance to go ahead and break out and discuss in small groups in our small group breakout rooms. And we've got some questions in the mural. If you've experienced this before with us, it's somewhat the same format. We're going to have a bit of what we call tool time, where we talk about a particular tool, how it's used, some of the cool things that people use it for, or methods that you might take a spin on a tool that you've seen used before in the past. And then we'll have a chance for Q&A, a short time for Q&A, followed by some breakouts where we would like to spend part of that time with each other, getting to know each other. So it's going to be a bit of a time where I'd love for you to share experiences on some of your travels, either where you've traveled or where you want to travel in the summer. We're getting into close to that summertime season where people tend to do big trips or have done big trips. So we'd love to connect this community and make this community of improvers a lot smaller, because we're all focused on improvement, and sometimes we'll be working together, and it's really nice to be able to have met on a personal level before we start working on projects or a professional level. So with that, what I'm going to do is open it up and introduce. I've already somewhat introduced Brian, but Brian Mackey is here. Go ahead and wave to us, Brian. Excellent. We're excited to have you here, Brian. And I'm going to go ahead and just pass it over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can start.
Well, good morning, everybody. Skippers, good to be with you here today. So we'll start off with we'll start off with a brief little question knowledge check opportunity, so I can see how well Ryan and Jakaria and others have been building up your A3 expertise in these right and black belt classes. So let's see how well you've been taught. So what is the size of, in the chat, what is the size of an A3? I want inches. And then is it larger or smaller than an A4? $11 by 17. Alexandra, okay. 14 by 17. All right, we're already starting to get some disparities here. Is it larger or smaller than an A4? Larger than an A4. All right. Yeah, so technically, if you round, it's 11 by 17, right? And it is smaller, or I'm sorry, larger than an A4. The sizes get smaller as the numbers get higher, which is fun. Back when I was doing doing actual engineering work, I did everything on A0s for like blueprints and stuff like that. Monster 2 feet by, or 3 feet by 4 feet pieces of paper. Okay. Where did A3 problem solving originate? Let me find time to punch in Secure GPT and see what it tells me. All right, Stefan. Yep. Yeah, you guys are smart. So it was originally part of the TPS. And when Ryan shares the slides, you can click a link on this one. This is a bit more of an interesting piece of it. So A3 problem solving was part of the Toyota Production System, TPS, which is far older. But then a couple decades later, Toyota's made their middle managers go through a training where they taught them all how to use A3s, like an A3 report or an A3 storyboard. So all these middle managers who were not operational leaders had to start reporting everything and using an A3 template. And apparently that's really when it drove things home, but yes, TPS, you were correct. Initially with problem solving and then later with reporting storytelling. All right, again, what types of A3s are you aware of? You might say one, none, project A3, something else. Implementation, strategic, Chelsea, you're aware of one. Problem solving, the one in right. All right. Yes. 4-box. Okay. So who's familiar with something that looks like this? This is actually the example from the improvement A3 template, right? That you were taught likely in right or your specialist course. Okay. This is what I would refer to as a storyboard A3 or a report A3. And actually how we teach you all is we teach you the DMAIC methodology, right? And we put it in these boxes and use an A3 to kind of walk you through DMAIC and make sure that you're keeping up to speed and completing all the steps, and are going to end up at a sustained solution that's going to hopefully last and improve the way we do things. So this would be a report A3 or a storyboard A3. Who recognizes this one? Here we refer to this one as the simple A3. This is not a template that the template is yours. I populated it with material from my past. Thus the dates are a little dated from 2019. But yeah, this is more along the lines of what I would call a problem-solving A3. Okay, so you're actually physically using this document to step through. You wouldn't try and cram DMAIC into this. That'd be trying to take an awful lot into a little. And so you would actually step through, as we go through these 4 boxes, we are physically solving the problem while doing it. And then, which we do not teach here yet, and there's various forms that these can take. This is not exactly the format I've seen here at Stanford, but this is what I would refer to as the strategy A3. And so to orient you, right, like a similar A3, you got a left and a right side. The left side is kind of the what's going on and why is it happening, and the right side being what we should do about it. And so for a strategy one, your bigger picture, we should be looking at how we've been performing in the past, what we do well, what we don't do well, what's the justification for doing some things differently. And then on the right side, all right, so now these are big bucket initiatives. So if we do these 4 things, we expect to improve the situation based on our analysis over here. You with me so far? We have our problem-solving A3, the simple A3, right? We have the strategic A3, and then this one's more of a report storyboard A3. And what if I told you could use all these in conjunction? So if I had a strategy A3, and listen up, this is the way operational planning for 2026 is going, so you may be seeing this again in the future. A strategy A3, each one of those initiatives could actually have its problem-solving A3 that flows from it, right? So each one of those 4 initiatives I showed you could have its own A3. And then honestly, each of the key drivers or interventions you have on that problem-solving A3, there could be a simple A3 behind that. And so one of the big things here is they link. And so if I'm working on this simple A3 down here, it should be very clear to me that if I do this, it should be impacting this key driver, which is part of this overall strategy that's important to us here at Stanford. Has anyone seen this type of connection traceability linkage before? Not really new to most people. Oh, it's good. Opportunity to learn something. All right, and this is where we'll spend some time. So A3 problem solving is one way to go about solving problems. And so my second sub bullet there is, if you're a carpenter and you've got a tool belt and the only thing on your belt is a hammer, all the stuff you run into starts looking like nails. How do I knock that in, right? But sometimes you come across things that look like screws, and a hammer doesn't work too well on that. And so my caution here to you, and you can give me some examples in the chat if you'd like, I think the Stanford Healthcare has the A3 tool in their tool belt, and so everything we see seems to look like an A3 is the right way to solve that problem. I'm sure you can give me examples where I'm off, but that's what I see. So my caution for you all as a community of improvers, it's not one size fits all. An A3 isn't the answer to every single problem you face. You can use that storyboard A3, this one, to kind of talk about the problem and the progress you make towards it. But the intervention itself, it might be a just do it, right? It could be something real simple. It doesn't necessarily have, it could be a single PDSA cycle where you come up with a hypothesis and execute on it, and study and adjust. It doesn't necessarily have to be something exactly like this. So recognize that not everything is a nail. Okay. We talked about a couple of examples of different A3s for different purposes. There's other ones I didn't show you. There's a proposal A3 where you would actually come through with a proposal of what you would want to work on and what you want to do. A project A3 is kind of a similar one to the storyboard one you've seen if you step through it. People can put anything into an A3 now, but the big thing is, right, there's a left and a right side. The left side is what's currently happening and why it's not so great and why it's happening, and the right side is what we're doing about it. We talked about the A3s working together, right? So simple A3s could all be captured in a larger A3, right? And each of those might be part of an overall strategy A3, right? And then this last one here, some things to consider as you go through A3 problem solving and problem solving in general. So scope. So when Toyota TPS rolled out A3 problem solving, A3s were used for smaller scoped projects that were 30 days max. How long is our right cohort? How long is our black belt class? If you're an ACEs, how long is that? It's a lot longer than 30 days, right? And so DMAIC is a different approach to problem solving, and we're using the A3 to tell the story, right? But if you use that simple A3, the 4-box one here, that's kind of more in line with the original TPS thought process around it. Those shouldn't be done very long. I usually have a hard cap around 90 days, and that includes breaking into sustainment. Okay. So manage the scope, And I may have one problem that has multiple A3s to solve it, right? So I may have one problem, but if I get into two very distinct root causes, maybe I have two simple A3s that come out of it, one for each one. And we can work them in parallel or sequence them. But don't resist the need to cram everything into one. That's the bottom one. It's one page for a reason. And the idea is to get us really, really good about knowing the critical few and the most important, the highest of the high importance and priority, right? So it's a challenging skill and something that Ryan and Jakaria and Supriya and Maggie and others here are teaching all of us, is how to be efficient and effective with that one page. As always, whatever you're doing differently, that intervention definitely needs to tie to the root cause or the key driver. What happens? You can put it in the chat. What happens if we implement something, but we haven't reached root cause? What's going to happen? You can chat or speak up with it. Yeah, Erica, you're right. Serena, correct. You might get right. You might get it right. Who knows? But many times we may not get the right answer, right? Because we haven't understood what the underlying reason of the problem is. So no matter what it is, and I know this has been drilled into you all, right? We need to make sure we get to root cause, that we understand what our key drivers are. And that's going to help us inform our thinking. A3s with lots of words get lost, include pictures. Okay. And yeah, so I'll pause there. I'm sure a lot of this is a refresh and a repeat for you. But what questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, ideas, do you have regarding anything we did or didn't talk about on A3s? And you can chat it or just shout it out, because we've got a nimble group here.
I'll ask a question, Brian. How do you overcome the idea that this can be overwhelming, right? Because now you've got the strategic A3 that leads to a storyboard that leads to an action. It's a lot for people who typically just use one A3. How do you actually have the conversations in change management to share the value and make sure people understand when to use which one, and not to freak out? How do you have that conversation?
I mean, at the heart, I ask Ryan, and then at the heart of it, right? If anything, err on the side of simplicity, right? If strategy A3s, and maybe this is a topic for a future program, right? They're great, and they can help us identify other things to work on. But the one to be really smart at and really good at is the simple one, right? That's 4-step problem solving. And so if at all else, I would focus on that one. And if we're worried about being overwhelmed or the problem's too big, remember, you can break it up into 2 of those or 3 of those. It doesn't have to just be on one. Super hard mistake that drags out your timeline and makes things confusing. It convolutes it. So chunking things up as much as possible into solvable bits, and maybe you chunk that up based on your span of control. Maybe you do it based on who's ready versus who's not. Maybe it's based on the root causes are completely different in completely different areas, right? I would say err on the side of smallness, use the 4-step one to get good at it, and understand that if it's a big problem, you can have many of them, many A3s to work towards it.
Yeah, I'd like to pitch in there too. I think I'd like to focus the idea or the concept around the picture. So Brian mentioned that this came about largely to be able to provide a picture of the work, and of course it helps us to us along the journey of thinking through the improvement process. But it does provide the strategic, all the different levels, provides a nice structure to be able to see a picture of how things fit together if we do this right. So certainly you wouldn't want to necessarily provide a strategic A3 to a frontline team. I think they'd be potentially really overwhelmed, but to an executive team, I think it would be very appropriate. And maybe as things are being socialized, it could be taking portions of a strategic A3 and helping frontline teams to see how maybe their 4-box A3 is connected to the bigger picture. Could be a good discussion, but it would have to be after they're used to seeing one so that you can connect the dots. Anything we do here at Stanford, we really try to be very careful not to focus too much on the tools. The tools are means to an end. So we're talking about an A3, but if the A3 is getting in the way of getting the work done, then don't focus on the A3. So that's a big thing that a bias that I would like to just share.
Very fair. So the other question, Stephanie, you asked about the rankings. I thought, Priya, you did a great job. Rice. So the effort impact grid, oftentimes you can refer to as a pick chart, right? Where we classify things into terms of the level of effort required to make that intervention happen. Is it high or low? And then the estimated impact of that intervention, is it high or low, right? And the things that are no-brainers to do are those high impact, low effort things. And they fall into the I in a pick chart, which would be implement, right? And then the other one to take notice of is the ones that fall into K, which means kibosh, right? Those are the things that are high effort and low value. We don't want to spend our time doing those. A case can be made for the other two. We can work on something that's low effort and low impact. Maybe that'll get us some buy-in from some key stakeholders. Maybe it'll earn us some goodwill and help build some relationships, but that's not really going to move the needle for us. Yep. And then this other C would be the challenge. So those are high impact, but also high effort. And so those might be super important as well, but we can only do so many at a time. And we need to understand that they typically have a longer life. That project usually is going to, or initiative is going to have a longer life cycle, right? It's going to take a longer amount of time to make that happen. And it could be for various reasons what's making it hard to implement, right? It could be overly complex. It could have a lot of different key stakeholders. It could be an innovative problem. It could be something that is completely outside of our span of control, right? There's a lot of different things that make problems complex.
That actually brought to mind something I think is worth mentioning with this group is, pick chart is one tool. And when you're talking through the different things, it reminded me of a time that I was working in an area where they didn't want to use kibosh because they thought it was too harsh. And so they wanted to use some other word. I don't even remember what we came up with. And maybe it's not right now because kibosh or kill was too strong. They didn't want that. So I think what that brings to mind, and I think it's an application for A3s or any tools we use, is as improvement professionals, we need to be nimble. We've got to be able to have the concept of the tool and be able to adapt it for use of whatever the audience we're working with needs. And not taking away the essence of the tool or what it's trying to get at, but if there is a word or a approach or something that is a barrier for a team, do something different. Go on a parallel track, because what you're after is the improvement, the learning, the challenge, or in this case, prioritization. Who cares what you call it? Figure out some other way and do it on the fly. Being able to be an advanced improver or any kind of improver, you've got to be able to do that. You've got to be able to adapt. yeah, so it's a method that we all should be practicing. We should know these tools well enough that we're able to adapt on the fly.
Here what I was, Ryan. I thought kibosh was the softer way of saying kill.
Yeah,
Shows what I know.
well, I know, it's interesting, right? I mean, it's so funny. And I've even had, you have all probably been in these as well. People didn't want to use red because it was too like judging. So they used like orange or something, or like some other color. It's really funny. So anyway, we have all of these things. Just a reminder to everyone, we do record these sessions, and I provide the link to all of our SCIP sessions on our YouTube channel that you can access through the smci.stanford.edu site. If you go there and go under the groups and then SCIP, you'll be able to see a link to both the information about our page, the most recent recording, as well as a link to our YouTube channel that has all of these recordings. Okay, so let's do this. What I'd like to do is break us out into teams. This is our chance to get to know each other better in smaller groups. I have the link. I'm going to provide the link again in the chat to our mural page. What I would like for you to do is when we go into these breakouts, I would like you to both address the questions that are in the mural, as well as going in and talking to each other about what you learned, but also about who you are. We're going to have a chance to introduce each other, okay? And we've already lost a bunch of people, so maybe they were just here for Brian. But we'll go ahead and break out now. All right, welcome back. So thanks for connecting. Hopefully that all went well for you. I'd love to hear some feedback, some of your thoughts, some of the ideas, the conversation, or even some of the icebreakers. If you talked about something totally different, I'd love to hear that too, because this is really about a community to connect with one another and get to know each other better so that we can work across our institution or across multiple institutions as this organization is growing beyond Stanford. So, and we welcome that. We welcome anyone who's interested in improvement science. So before I do, I want to ask Jakaria if she would do some quick announcements of some things coming up that you're going to really want to be aware of. So Jakaria, would you share?
Thanks, Ryan. Please? So happy April, everybody. Just a few things to make sure that you are aware of in case you want to participate, glean from, or add to. So our May topic will be on change management. We're really excited to talk about change management. So that invite will be coming out soon. Also with regards to QI different events. So as you know, we have our Lean conference every year here. We host it at Stanford, and people from all over the world come, including Australia and Ireland and all that good stuff. So the conference, the Lean conference this year, will be held September 10th and 11th, but abstracts are due June 2nd. So if you have not presented at a conference before, this is a great one to come to because it's not huge, it's not intimidating. We have many opportunities for people to present in breakout sessions if you've never done it before. We have posters that are presented as well as the main stage. So if you have not gone to a conference and you have not presented, go to that website and check out the opportunity to submit an abstract. And your idea doesn't have to be fully baked. So if you have questions, you can always reach out to Ryan, myself, and anyone on the PI team, and we can walk you through that opportunity. The other thing I wanted to share is that our QI symposium, which happens here on Stanford's campus in Lincoln, will be held on May 15th. So that's a great opportunity to walk through and look at the projects and the work that's going on in the organization. You might find opportunities to synergize with your departments or get ideas about how to solve problems that you see that someone else is already solving. So that is in Lincoln, May 15th, and it's from 3 to 5 p.m. and there's no cost for that. So I hope that you'll find an opportunity to engage in some of these. They're great ways to learn, to meet other improvers, and to come up with ideas to learn from the best so you don't have to cook up everything from start yourself. So thanks for the space, Ryan, and I'll turn it back.
Thanks. All right, perfect. So I would love to hear from several people. I'd love this to be a dialogue. If you would share some of the things that were big ahas, like first question, what, if anything, shared today aligned with or challenged your beliefs about A3s and why? Anyone want to share anything like that?
Sure. So I wanted to, when we talked about this, I was really appreciative of Brian's comments and feedback relative to you don't need to do everything in one big chunk. I think the overwhelming part of it, of an A3, trying to figure out how to fit everything into just one A3 has been challenging me in the past. And so knowing that you really don't have to do that was really refreshing. So I appreciate that. And I'll be using that for future A3.
Excellent. Thank you. That's good feedback. And I think it's a good reminder. Others?
I'll just jump in and say, Brian, thank you so much for presenting this, succinct but very comprehensive view and approach. For me, the aha moment was, oh my gosh, there's so many different types of A3, and I love the connection that you made and using them together. So like to be able to see the strategic A3 connecting to the problem-solving A3, and then maybe like simplifying that with the simple A3, that for me was a new progression that I learned today that I think is very beneficial, especially given the work that our team does. So seeing that connection of different types of A3s being used together.
I definitely agree with Maggie. I guess I didn't really know that there was a thing such as a strategic A3, and the way the visuals that you gave of how they're connected was really helpful.
I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly or not, but Stephanie and I had a great conversation, and I was actually excited to be paired with Stephanie when I found out her background. And I thought it was interesting because Stephanie comes from non-healthcare. And so as we were talking about it, she was kind of, and I'm sorry, Stephanie, I hope you don't mind me telling our little story. But she was saying how, she's used to non-emotional data, right? Because she doesn't come from healthcare, she doesn't come from working with humans. And so when you're doing these A3s and you're working in healthcare, how do you leave the emotion out as you're trying to figure out what needs to be worked on and what the problems are? Because we don't always have data. Some of it is opinion, some of it's very data driven, but not always, depends on what you're trying to fix. And I just thought it was very interesting because in my world, coming from SPD, I was like, I think we relate a lot to manufacturing type, which is a little bit where Stephanie came from, where you can leave emotion out of it, but then there's the flip side of patients in the OR and you're looking at that whole experience. And so I thought it was interesting. And I don't know if you guys have a great reply to that, in how do you make sure that you're not changing things based on emotion when there's not necessarily a full data set to work off of when you're problem solving.
So this is so health, right? So a lot of these tools that we use and the methodologies, they come from manufacturing, because for profit in manufacturing in particular, like they're ahead of the game. And the other part in terms of what separates that, right, is Toyota, any other car manufacturer, they are high volume, low mix, right? They make a lot of stuff and they do it on a very small array of products, right? Healthcare, we have a low volume and a high mix, right? So a lot of the standard tools and thinking around just high volumes, repeatable processes don't necessarily fit one for one into our environment. And one of them is the emotion and personal touch, right, of our line of work. We are a service industry, but we serve the people. The widgets, right, are the people that are being served and worked upon and that we're process improving for, right? So and I'm sure Ryan has something much more eloquent and succinct to answer that question, but it's a lot of times we're left with qualitative data, but you can quantify qualitative data. Like you can get enough qualitative data and ask for it in a repeated manner that we can start to quantify it, right? So in the absence of hard objective data, we can try to add some objectivity to subjective and qualitative stuff too. So there are ways to do that. And there are also more manual ways to get objective data too, right? Like I have not been above putting a piece of paper next to a receptionist, and he or she are marking down what people are calling about, right? And so then we can then translate that into, right, well, we know that half the questions we see are based on patients not knowing how to do blank. And so we can then turn our interventions around that. Same thing at a nursing station. Put a mark down here on why any reason that a patient was delayed for discharge. So whether it's in Epic or not, I'm actively recording and then can quantify it. So objectify and quantify qualitative, but then also don't be afraid of doing a sample of something more manual if necessary.
Yeah,
Brian, I think that. Oh, go ahead. No,
I'll just jump on that and tie a line to your CTQ chart, right? I mean, your CTQs they start with how people feel, what they want, right? That's qualitative. But then we make sure that you convert it into something we actually can measure. So just to kind of double down on what Brian said, that qualitative data does start with emotion, and we can't discount it. It's actually a gift, right? Because it centers people and allows people to connect with why we're making the decisions we're making and how we're moving. But our superpower is then to be able to quantify it so that it can be meaningful and we can measure if we're making a difference in that particular piece.
Good. Something, Brian, you said clicked in my head about why it's so hard to do this work in healthcare, and why it's sometimes so hard to apply the principles of manufacturing, or these, lean principles, for example, because that's TPS is synonymous with the lean concepts. Why it's so difficult, and it is that concept of Toyota. They have certain parts, and the same side mirror can be used for the Tundra as it can for the Sienna, as it can for, then they mix and match, and they get really good at each of those particular things. And it's there's small variation in what they use. And in healthcare, it's so broad and so complicated. And so, but the way you just shared that in my mind was yeah, that is why it's so difficult. It's really hard to do this. And then you got, of course, we're not dealing with cars and car parts. We're dealing with people who might decide not to do something, or they are grumpy, or they haven't eaten well, they get angry, all kinds of things. And so processes, the idea with the A3, I think, is important. It's the thinking through the process. It helps us to guide the process and be able to make it visible. So, man, that was really good. Thanks for sharing that.
I think this is also at the heart of next time's topic, right? Change management, because all project is change management, and that's where the people aspect comes in. And, my conflicts between, what's in it for me across the team could vary, and aligning on that is so important to identify, the right interventions to focus on so that, everybody's needs are met. So I think the emotional part is important, but how we address it effectively, I think is what defines how successful a project is and how much we can sustain it. Yeah, more to come next month with Dawn.
So good. Yeah, so good. Any last comments?
Just recognize when Chelsea, back to your comment, right? Just recognize when what you're receiving are emotional inputs, right? Like all of our patient experience scores, our HCAHPS, right? All those things that are important. And who responds to these surveys? It's people who had a great experience, or people who want to vent about the negative experience, right? You lose a lot of people in the middle. So, those are the people who want to provide us feedback if we're talking about specific patient related data too, right? So and as long as you know that, you kind of know what you look like, and that the average patient is somewhere, experience is somewhere in the middle, right? But we just got to be aware of what emotions and stuff go into it, and where, it's like anything you watch on TV. You hear far sides of the spectrum and you lose kind of the middle. And it's like that way with our patients as well.
And I made my comment
thank you, Brian.
half-heartedly about surgeons, but I do think that's also maybe a little bit of difference in healthcare too, is when you're talking about manufacturing, if we're talking about cars, there's kind of one customer, right? The person buying the car. I'm sure there's more, but I'm going to leave it high level. You get into healthcare, you've got patient, you've got family members, you've got surgeons, you've got staff. Like, there's so many different people that have their opinions, that have their needs, and trust, no one has the same need or desire or complaint. And so sometimes it is hard to figure out as well. And that's where I do think an A3 can help. I love the simple A3, not the strategic, but I love the simple, because it can put it all down there, because you don't know what you're supposed to take forward. There's so many different things coming at you, and it can help you organize it, which probably is a little different than, again, maybe manufacturing, where there's a smaller line of who your customer is.
Very good. Very good. This has been so much fun. I feel like we could continue this conversation for another hour and not even begin to exhaust it. But we don't have that luxury of time. I would like to thank Brian. Thank you very much for your willingness to share this topic with us and giving us a picture of everything from strategic down to the 4-box. The linkage of the different A3s was a wonderful picture and a good reminder for all of us of how these can be connected. I put in the chat the link to the mural. I would love it if you would take a moment to go to the very bottom of the page of the mural. We've got on there an area that says, I'd like, I wish, I wonder. I'll share a picture of what that looks like. What I liked about today, what I wish maybe we would have done or talked about, and then I wonder maybe if we could do something different in the future. If you would all just add a post-it to at least one of these areas, you just double click in there and it will give you a post-it. So you double click in the post-it and then just type a comment. Comment in what I like, what I wish, what I wonder. That, if you do that for us, it will give us an opportunity to see your feedback and be able to respond to it for next time to make this session better. We're constantly trying to figure out ways to make this better. And in fact, during the breakouts, we were even talking about ways we could improve this particular session. So we really appreciate you spending time with us. We hope you come back next month when we talk about the change management, and really value this group of improvers. So thank you again for your time. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.